Well, hey, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Church Leadership Lab. Our goal on this podcast is to have conversations that help empower healthy churches. So we want to have all these conversations that we can that hopefully build into you as church leaders that then spill over into your ministry and help your church grow. And so we are excited today to have another one of those conversations with John Darnell, the CEO of Global Outreach. Now, John became CEO of Global Outreach in 2019 after serving in various capacities with the organization since 2011. He and his wife, Emily, moved as missionaries to Latin America in 2012 with their young daughter, Samantha, and served almost 5 years on the mission field. Now, prior to joining Global Outreach, John was a high school Spanish teacher. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Spanish, as well as a Master of Arts in Curriculum and Instruction from the University of Mississippi. John, we are so glad to have you on the show, representing with the Ole Miss Cup.
I had to. Hey, Scott, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, really, really looking forward to our conversation, talking about what does mission work look like today? A lot has changed in the world in the last 100 years, and I'm really looking forward to just kind of diving into all things mission work. But before we do, one thing I do like to ask everybody, you know, you have the kind of the high level public bio, but what is something that doesn't make the public bio that all your friends, all your family would know about you?
You know, a couple of things come to mind. I think I'll stick with that I'm a pilot. So,
oh, wow.
So you might see behind me this plane flying through the field. That's not me. That's my dad. So I grew up, my dad's a crop duster. So the yellow planes you see diving into the fields and that sort of thing. Yeah. So I grew up riding on his lap through the fields, which was a lot of fun. And so he was really generous in college and let me get my pilot's license. I don't own a plane, but my brother took over the family business and sometimes will lend us the plane to go see family or travel. So that's a fun little, that's a hidden fact about me, I would say.
Now, let me ask you, is like learning to fly a plane, is it like, you know how like you have your kid like sit on your lap and drive the car a little bit? Is that a similar process, or is it a little more formal as far as before you actually take off in the air?
Well, I think part of it is that in these planes, you're sitting side by side and there's dual control. So it's like the driver's ed car, where, you know, the driver's ed teacher had the brake on their side, but they have everything on their side. Yeah. So they can baby you through that and it be a safe experience. But I tell you, they kick you out of the nest fast. They do. Okay. And so I think I had 9 or 10 hours of experience when my instructor got out of the plane as a surprise and said, "All right, it's on you." I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Wow.
I got close to God that day, Scott. I'm up in the air and I'm looking down at the ground thinking, I've got to.
Yeah.
Obviously, I lived. Yeah. Here we are.
Yeah. But nerve wracking nonetheless, I'm sure, when they're like, "All right, good luck to you.
Good luck. It's on you now."
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'd love to kind of jump into our conversation. You have a ton of experience yourself on the field, mission work, but then also your work at Global Outreach for a number of years, and then ultimately serving as CEO. And I think just like other aspects of the church, missions have grown and changed as things like culture, technology have changed. So I'm curious for you, what have been some of the biggest shifts in missions that you've seen over the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah. And, you know, I'll go to these mission CEO meetings, which are incredibly helpful. And I'm typically the youngest one there, typically.
Yeah.
And so I get to learn from all these guys who have been in it for lifetimes, you know, and and next month I'll be there at the annual CEO retreat that Missionaries does. But there's always this moment I've found where these guys who were probably on the field 25 years, and that's the model their organization promotes, you know, they're bemoaning the shift, the generational shift. They're lamenting this change. Let's think of like a Hudson Taylor who put his things in a coffin and got on the ship. That his coffin was his suitcase, you know, and moved to the mission field. And that was the level of commitment and the mindset around missions was I'm giving my life and I'm going to put my hand to the plow and not look back, you know. And then what you see today, I would say, is more of a 3 to 5 year mindset around missions, or even shorter. It might even be shorter than that. So in this same room, you have these guys that are saying, how is missions going to function if our model is move there, learn the language, learn the culture? It takes 10 years and then we start, as opposed to someone my age or younger who's saying, okay, I could go do that for 3 years. I could go do that for 5 years. And Scott, this is a really big shift because you have to change the entire model. You have to say, okay, I can't go in there thinking I'm going to be there forever and I'm going to build some ministry and then I've got to figure out how to hand it off. You've got to go with the mindset that, okay, I'm not going to be here forever. Who am I investing in? It's like immediately the Timothy model. Like you don't have that first part. It's immediately, who am I investing in? How is this going to be sustainable? How can it be local led or national led? And I think there's some positive, as much as generational shifts can cause consternation for those who have come before us. Inevitably, there's a positive there of maybe we're going to support believers who were there, or maybe we're doing this, 0 to 1 or 1 to 2 work, this initial thing to hand to somebody else. And that's a really big shift that I've seen lately.
Yeah. It is interesting though, with all shifts, with all with everything, even the digital age that we're in, there's things sometimes that are unintended. There's things that are, and that's both unintended negative consequences, but also unintended positive ones as well. But that seems like actually a positive thing, to where instead of, hey, let me go and like you said, spend 10 years where, and you probably won't even fully learn culture, language, all of that, and then build something. And not to say that, not to put anything down about that, because that's still an amazing work that people are doing. But that idea of, hey, I'm going in, and then I'm not going to be here forever, and so I have to build this thing so that it keeps going. I have to imagine that has some really positive, not consequences, but positive results then in the ongoing ministry that's happening in these places. Well, if you're in ministry, then church operations can be a huge challenge. There's a lot to do, little time to do it, and whether it's just you or you have a team, my guess is you have a full plate. So how do you do things like communication and engagement, stewarding your finances, managing your digital presence, fostering community, and so much more in a way that builds a healthy church? Well, answering that question was the goal of creating the Guide to Healthy Church Operations. We wanted to take our 40 plus years of experience serving the church, combined with wisdom from various experts, to provide a blueprint for how you can navigate the ever-changing world of church operations. In this guide, you'll find things like how to improve member engagement and participation, building into staff and volunteers, making better decisions with clear metrics, the essentials of financial stewardship for churches, and so much more. And of course, we wanted to give this to you for free. So there's a link in the show notes to download the Guide to Healthy Church Operations. And we would love for you to grab a copy and use it to help grow a healthy church.
And I would say another shift that I think is happening too for us, and my view is limited. I will say I don't speak for the entire missions community. There's a lot of big historic organizations that probably are doing a lot of similar things that they have. For us, we've begun to get more and more involved with what we would call national missionaries. So sometimes maybe somebody listening to this podcast would think what we would call a west to the rest model of missions. And like the American has this calling, and the American partners with the church and missions organization, they go to this thing. What we're seeing is, okay, the Ugandan who has started a ministry who's saying, hey, I need equipping or resources, or and we want to be really careful about how we enter into those relationships where we don't, with our American mindset, ruin it. Like, we don't want to mess it up. But let
me show you how it's done.
Yes, we arrive with all the answers. And so that is a really interesting shift. We have more and more people who are not American who have come to seminary in the States and are going back home, and they have language and culture, and they're going to be there. And they're, and you're like, hey, this feels like a really good investment, for lack of a better term. This feels like a good partnership. And that's another shift that we're seeing.
Yeah. I'd love to dive into that a little bit. I know we talked about like the traditional view of missionary work, move somewhere, learn, whether it's a tribe, unreached people group, learn the language, learn the culture, start to share the gospel or whatever it might be. And again, we're not discounting that at all, but like a lot of what we're talking about so far is that it doesn't always have to look like that. So can you talk about some of the ways that you've seen missionary work kind of take shape and some of the maybe forward thinking ways that now, especially at Global Outreach, you guys are thinking about mission work?
Yes. And I appreciate that affirmation you're making. I feel like I have to as well say, hey, if you're with Ethnos 360 or something like that, like praise God that he has gifted you in that way, to go and enter into a culture and a language where they've never heard of Jesus. And you've got to do some really early work. That's incredible. I think unintentionally in church, what we've communicated is that is missions. And that's the only thing that is missions.
Yeah.
Which means the creative who doesn't feel like a church planner that they can move to Papua New Guinea or whatever to do that work says, oh, missions isn't for me. Or the accountant or the business person, maybe the takeaway they get is, oh, it's my job to give so that others can go. And certainly, yes. But I'd say one of the biggest needs we have right now, Scott, teachers. I was yesterday speaking at a Christian school in North Mississippi, and it was a chapel service, 500 something students. And so I stayed around afterwards, and a girl walked up to me. She said, hey, I want to be a teacher. Can I be in missions? I said, oh my goodness, we need 4 teachers this fall at our international school that we have at Good Shepherd's Fold in Jinji, Uganda. And if you're listening to this and you're a teacher or a teacher, that's a serious thing. I'm not making this story up. We really do. But we have an international school there that serves missionary families in the Jinja area. And that's how those missionaries can be on the field, is they know the educational needs of their children are being met. Their children didn't choose to become missionaries. They didn't choose to move to the mission field. And so that understanding, like any vocation you have, really, you can use on the field in service of ministries and growing the kingdom. And that, I would say, is a very different mindset. There's some really great works that like Scatter, that I think it's Andrew Scott is the name of the author of that, is from Operation Mobilization. Take your business and go and start a business or get hired somewhere. This more of that, take your vocation with you, is another way that we've seen it change. And that makes more, I hate to say it makes more sense, because again, inevitably it feels like we're saying bad things about the ones before us, but it's a hard ask to say to an engineer, like, hey, don't do any more engineer stuff. All that experience doesn't count. Come be a church planner and evangelist. And they're saying, right, that's not my gifting. So I guess it's not for me. And that's the part that I want us to do away with. The it's not for me part.
Yeah. Well, because I think too, the needs of, I mean, you and I have had a little bit of conversation about this, but the needs of missionaries as well are changing in the method of how do you communicate? How do you share your vision with people? How do you get enough supporters to actually be able to do the work? Like all of that is changing and shifting along with these other kind of cultural shifts. And so the need for that is growing as well. And, again, with the advent of the internet and all of that, I mean, there's plenty of people who are far smarter than me, I know, who have thought and spoken on this and written on this and all of that. But you start to have not similar needs, but you start to have, a way to take these skills that, whether it is business, accounting, storytelling, creative, and there's actually a use now, right? Globally, in a lot of places that you would go where you can actually then, serve on the mission field with it.
That's right.
I think, one of the examples too, I think of, I know, you and I both have mutual friends, serving in Kenya, and people on the podcast know that I was able to go there recently, and just seeing, two people serving full-time missionaries, but serving with those storytelling gifts, creative gifts, communication, and just kind of what that's done for the ministry, I think has been one of those things where you step back and you go, okay, yeah, so there are some other ways that people can serve and serve in a way that, they're putting their gifts to work. And
what comes to mind as you talk about that really is this body of Christ idea that we understand that in a local church context, right? Like, okay, we need different people doing different things and we all complement each other. Well, then we take part of the body and we ship them off around the world, and we're not connected to, they're not surrounded by the giftings that help them be successful in the ways that they need to be successful. And so I think that's what we're saying is we need all of these gifts there. Yep. I'm not saying the whole church has to pick up and move, but we've got to make sure that they have the support and the things that they need.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about then from kind of a church level then, how can churches grow in supporting missionaries? Obviously there's financial aspect.
Right.
And so it's, resources are needed for sure. But especially if they don't maybe have missionaries directly from their church, or they're like hearing some of this and some of the wheels are turning, the gears are turning, and they're like, okay, well, what can we do? I mean, what are some ways that you would say churches can increase that involvement, or maybe even, for lack of a better term, diversify? So there is financial, but they're supporting it in multiple ways.
So big picture, I'll take this opportunity, just to say that the call to Abraham that we talk about in Genesis is the first Great Commission, right? Because the whole point was that there's a descendant of Abraham that's going to be a blessing to the nations. Sometimes in church world, and we can do the same thing at my church. We get myopic. We make it about us and our things, our programs, and what we're doing. And I think the opportunity is God's heart for the nations. You don't have to be a missions organization to look at Psalms, to look at the Bible and see the redemptive plan. Look at Revelation 9 and see every nation, tribe, and tongue around the throne. And I know this is really big picture stuff and not as practical. I'll move practical here in a little bit, but that's something that I've seen. If we're not talking, like, the congregation relies on you, church leader, to help cultivate a heart for the nations.
Yeah.
So if we're not doing that and we're not talking about that, then the normal believer sitting in the pew or coming to small group is not naturally going to do that. So now I'm the old guy in the room lamenting the generational change, Scott. I've become that guy. Okay.
We've gotten there quick in 16 minutes.
I know I've aged a lot in this conversation, but there's a little bit of that I think that churches used to do. And in my context, it would have been RAs and GAs, Royal Ambassadors, Girls in Action, these programs that helped cultivate a heart where you're praying for missionaries and you're talking about missions, and your missionary, gets more than a table in the lobby and those sorts of things, and where nowadays it's like, well, yeah, you can sit up in the back, but that's not really what we're about. It's like, no, wait a second. And I'm not telling you have to give your pulpit to a missionary, but how do you talk about the nation? That'd be the big one. Now, narrowing down the really practical things. I was just in Uganda, as we were talking about. I was just in Uganda visiting we have 27 there, 27 adults. I saw 24 of them. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about, hey, what could churches do? And they said, John, I love how you guys have just come to see us. Like, we didn't have to put together a team or this vacation Bible school or this evangelism thing so you can come and do something. I just really wish, like, our pastor or our former small group leader, our friend, would just come see us, and we could have dinner together, and we could wake up and have coffee together, and didn't have to do anything. Didn't have to put on a dog and pony show. And we also didn't have to build a short-term team experience, but there's so much value in that. So there's like one really practical thing. If you do know a missionary or you have a relationship with a missionary, go see them, take them peanut butter from the States that they can't get, take them their favorite thing that their kids miss, and sit with them and love them. I think will go a long way.
Well, and I would say too, like, for those church leaders hearing that, don't discount the power of presence and prayer.
Yes.
Because if you send people, I get, we have such a mindset with a short-term thing. And honestly, even when I got back from camp, people are like, oh, what did you do? What did you do? What did you do?
Right.
It was, and I totally understand the question, but it's sort of like, I think us as Americans typically go and it's like, what can we accomplish?
Right.
And the reality is, even what we learned, that the work that we could have taken on would have taken from those whom that is the only work that they could possibly have. And there's no other job that they, that's taking food out of somebody's mouth, which is not always the case, but in our context, but the power of being there, the power of praying, the power of just saying, I want to invest my time, and then be an ambassador as I go back to say, no, you don't even understand. Let me tell you, let me share that vision. Let me, that's a powerful, just as powerful of a trip. And that's, I think, what I hear you saying as, hey, we built a school, or we built this, which again is not bad. That could meet an incredible need, but the other is also equally as important.
Yeah, for sure. It goes a long way. And it means, I remember our church coming to see us when we lived in Ecuador, and we had some mission team things we did, but the missions pastor was a former missionary. And he said, hey, John, where do you and Emily, where's your favorite place to go eat? Do you have a babysitter we can hire? And they took care of the child care. They took us out to dinner. They spoiled us. And it was just a really, really nice experience that I still remember. And that's one of my key moments that sticks out to me from the mission field about how our church blessed us.
That's awesome. Well, what encouragement would you give to those who might be listening and might be like kind of wrestling with that call to mission work? I know that there can be overlap. I know there's people who have served in ministry, here in the States, that then feel kind of a pull to mission work or globally, moving. So how can they kind of discern that call? How can they kind of explore that?
I think I'm thinking about the person who maybe hasn't gone on the short-term trip yet. Like we have one of my first roles here when I moved to the States to the home office of Global Outreach was mobilization, meaning helping people like this who are calling and saying, hey, I feel called. How do I get there? Where do I go? What do I do? Yeah. And one of the first things I would say would be, hey, have you gone on a trip? Like it really doesn't even, pray about it, but it don't really even matter where, and if your church doesn't have one, we at Global Outreach offer those. So if you go to our website, globaloutreach.org, short-term opportunities, and you'll go to a page where we have some, you can go with me to Ecuador this fall as an example. So take the first step of go and serve. Now, if you've already done that and you're saying, okay, something's stirring here, God's doing something, what do I do with that? So there's a great resource, a couple named David and Vicki Frazier. They are based out of the Memphis area, but they wrote a book called Mission Smart. And I think that subtext there is 15 questions to ask before going into cross-cultural ministry or before becoming a missionary. And it deals with the heart. So it deals with you as a person, like, why do I really want to do this? And it can suss out some of those unintentional reasons we think we want to be missionaries to make sure we're really called, and has really good questions. And then it focuses on the place. Like, how do I know where I want to go serve? And somebody might say, hey, I'm called to go reach Muslims, but they've never met a Muslim, as an example. So that book would say, hey, if you're in Memphis, there's a whole Muslim community there. Go make friends, begin to get that experience and let that experience inform how God is going. And I think that's the big thing, Scott, sometimes in spiritual things that sometimes we think all of it's going to be solved in our quiet time. All the answers are going to be solved there and God's going to reveal it to us. And certainly that is a huge part. That is a key, the foundational component, but it's that plus exploration and taking steps of faith, like the trip, like the Muslim friend or the Muslim community, taking those next steps of faith to see, okay, God, I see how you've gifted me, or, oh, I'm so glad I did not do that.
Yeah.
And then the last place is partners of that book. There's 5 questions around, should you go with the missions organization? The answer is yes. What is what is our church situation like? Who are we going to work with? So it's just extremely practical and help. And we actually, our team, if you reach out to us, we walk with people through those sorts of resources to help them discern what God's doing.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm curious, you mentioned, should you go with a mission organization, and it's a quick yes. What is that for somebody who might even be thinking about, okay, what advantage is there to going with a mission organization versus, hey, I'm just going to go on my own? And correct me if I'm wrong, but not all mission organizations are the same as far as like, hey, this is, X amount was given, you get X amount, or it's X amount was given, this amount gets taken, now you get this amount. So can you unpack a little bit of that for people?
Absolutely. So number one, I think the permission to play value, here is the church is the sender. So we'll say, hey, biblically, there's not a missions organization. So sometimes churches are equipped. There are churches who are so good at sending that they handle all the things a missions organization handles. So there are cases where you have the passion, the interest, the leadership within the church where they can accomplish that. And that's absolutely fine. In a lot of churches, they have that spiritual component of sending, but they have never had no one on their staff or no one in their church has ever been a missionary. And so they don't know what it's like to move your family. Like, what is it like for your 8-year-old child to leave their friends and their grandparents and everything they've known and land in China? How do you navigate that as a family? How can you be possibly prepared just to handle the marriage stress that being on mission causes? How do you even know where to go and how to partner and not make all the mistakes of missionaries before you in that place? And that's where I think the wisdom of the elders, not necessarily John, but the people in our organization and in a missions organization can help you not make those mistakes, can help protect your family. And then you mentioned the financial component. It helps you as a missionary. You've got to raise your own funds unless you go with an organization like the International Mission Board, the Southern Baptist Group, that's part of the cooperative program they're giving. So more than likely, you're going to have to raise funds. We do fundraising training. We help handle all that money in a way that gives your donors confidence that they're not just handing you money and they don't know how it's handled. You might think that that's a great idea. I promise you it's not a great idea. So there's some accountability and around that. Our missionaries get 100% of what they raise through global outreach. All the recruiting and support services that we offer, we fundraise to be able to do those things for them. So one more, I think, nuance to the missions organization conversation is, what do you feel called to do? So if you want to translate the Bible, I would say, hey, don't go with global outreach. Call Wycliffe, get in their program and go with them, because their strategy is so well built. They can train you and they can get you to the right place and you're going to be successful. If you have a vision to build a different ministry, like we give our missionaries a whole lot of autonomy on how they're using their gifting, how they're running the ministry. Maybe that's a good fit for you. And so there's just a lot of exploration that might feel like, but Scott, God's calling me today. I've got to go tomorrow. I can't spend time raising money. I can't spend time. That's lacks faith, John. I can't spend time partnering with an organization. They want me to go to training and there's people dying and going to hell. I need to get to the field. And I felt some of those things too, but I've seen over 13 years now with global outreach, how slowing down, taking time leads to fruitful ministry for the long haul, as opposed to, hey, we're 3 months in and we have to come off the field.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really wise and something that, I know the tension of, I feel this calling and got to make it happen right now. But I think we have plenty of examples too, even in scripture. There's a calling and then there's an appointing, and that time in between is really important. And God does work even in that, to then fulfill what he's called us to. So
that's a good word.
Well, one of the things, I mentioned in kind of our intro that this podcast is about empowering healthy churches. And I would love to hear just your thoughts around what is one component of a healthy church?
Ooh. Can I call a friend? No. I will tell you, as I think about this question, I ask myself, what attracted us to the church we go to now? And the church family, so we go to a bilingual multicultural church, and we're in Tupelo, Mississippi. People are always shocked. For my wife and me, it's a blessing because we get to speak Spanish like we did on the mission field, and we have Latinos, brothers and sisters, American, all worshiping together. But the parent church of our church, being in the same community, watching them when we weren't even a part of it, healthy leadership culture. It's really fascinating to see the guy who planted it 25 years later, he's still involved with it. That they have lifted up and raised up a lot of other leaders who are still with the organization. Sometimes you see every 3 years a new pastor, every 3 years this, every 5 years that. Church splits. And I just met with them and I don't even agree with them theologically in all the points or doctrinally or whatever, but I'm a part of their church family because of the fruit of a positive and healthy culture and how they lead. And so that's something that has really impressed me and made it attractive for me to go there. So that's how I would answer this question. What makes it attractive and healthy looking, healthy leadership culture, and that they are really intentional in that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it trickles down, right? Usually the leadership culture is what is going to infuse itself into everything. So that's, that's well said. Could you do me a favor? Just share with people as they've kind of heard. I know you've mentioned a couple of things that Global Outreach does, both where people can go to explore maybe a short-term trip, maybe some of the, resources in exploring, are they being called to mission work, but also where people can go to support global outreach. I know you mentioned 100% of what people give to missionaries goes to those missionaries, which is really huge. But I know that you all are able to do that because people then support global outreach itself. So can you help people kind of just take those next steps if they're interested?
Absolutely. So globaloutreach.org. So you can see an opportunity there to support the organization, Global Outreach, help a new missionary go to the field, support a missionary family that we described that is struggling and trying to thrive as a family in the middle of all of the pressure that they're under in that cross-cultural life. So we have those opportunities for giving there. You can also see all of our missionaries, not all of our missionaries around the world, but the ones that are in places where we can say that they are. You can see those families listed on the website. You'll also see short-term opportunities. There's a fly-out menu. So short-term opportunities will show you some of the trips that we're leading. You can also fill out an internship inquiry. Hey, I think I want to be a missionary. There's a button and a form for that. And so that you can talk to one of our mobilization coaches and they can walk you through that process. I would say also to a church leader, I was asked this yesterday as well. So John, can you help our youth group have a summer opportunity? Can you connect us with a ministry that does this? Can you help our church do that? So if you're a church leader and you're looking for mission partnerships, we have them in 50 plus countries. We can help connect your church based on what you're interested in and the type of people you have. We can be matchmakers with missionaries and ministries, and we can help serve your church. Because I've had pastors tell me, Scott, they say, John, somebody says they're called to missions and I don't know what to do. If they tell them to call John, we're happy to walk with people and serve the church in missions.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's certainly your heart that's come through in our conversation today. And we'll make sure to link to that for people and would certainly encourage everyone listening to, to explore not only mission work yourself, but supporting global outreach, in what you all are doing. So we're not done yet. We do have what we call our final five. These are just kind of rapid fire final questions for you. So first one coming at you now is, what is one book that you'd recommend to church leaders?
Spiritual Leadership by Oswald Sanders.
Yeah.
I read it when I first became CEO. I need to reread it. Very impactful. Very impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. Great book. What is the last thing that you listened to? Spotify, Apple Music, whatever it might be.
You did send me this rapid fire, full disclosure, and I would open Spotify. Okay, Scott. And
yeah,
I'm just going to share truthfully here.
Yeah.
Go Fish, a missions podcast. It's our podcast we just launched. I said, oh no, I can't tell Scott I listened to my own podcast is the last thing I listened to on Spotify. But I guess I just did. We just launched.
I love it.
We do missionary interviews. Go Fish, a missions podcast.
Right on. Well, we'll make sure to link to that. And I actually really appreciate honest answers to that question, because there is sometimes like a song or something, or like, oh, it's kind of like this Disney musical that, whatever, like, hey, no. I want the truth and nothing but the truth. So it's perfect. All right. Number 3, what is your favorite piece of technology? And the only rule we make here is you can't say your phone.
I would say my AirPods, truthfully.
Yeah.
I love these things. The noise and I can actually hear better. I wear them in the car so I can hear. Yeah. And I absolutely love these things.
I'm with you. I have a pair as well. Do you ever use the transparent? I think it's called transparent.
Yes.
Where like you can hear things around you better.
Yes.
That because I like the noise canceling too on flights or whatever, but the transparent, like I'll be out for a walk or something. I'm like, I want to know if somebody's sneaking up on me. I gotta, that's the one that I'm
sometimes you can
like,
feel like your ears plugged. If they're on noise cancellation, you feel almost like you have earplugs in, and sometimes that's annoying. And that transparency makes it a nice experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Number 4, what is a quote or piece of advice that has stuck with you over the years?
Whew, man. When I was a kid, I went on a date, and this being the rapid 5, I'll make this very fast, but there was a local church member who paid for my meal, and it shocked me. I'd never had this experience. I'm a 16-year-old. I'm trying to impress this girl.
Yeah.
And then I went out to dinner. It was a week or 2 later, and this guy was there, different restaurant, different state across the line. And he did it again. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, he must be rich, because he bought my meal twice, and I'm 16, My dad looked at me, and I've never forgotten this. And he said, John, don't mistake wealth for generosity, or is either the other way, generosity for wealth.
Yeah.
And that really challenged me, because it's like, oh, they must have a lot of money, therefore they can be generous. My dad's one of the most generous people I know, and would never be accused of being wealthy. And that has just really how I've managed money and thought about how to be generous to other people. It's not out of excess, it's out of just sacrificial generosity. And so that was 20 years ago, but it's still stuck in my mind.
Yeah, that's really good. All right, last one. What's one thing that you'd like to communicate to our audience of church leaders?
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. You see the statistics, whether it's missionaries or people in church ministry, especially through and post COVID, and you see burnout. You see people. I had a guy tell me yesterday he said, John, I'm learning that ministry is very thankless. I'm learning, and he shared with me some of the criticism he had after something good he tried to do this past weekend. And I just feel like church leaders, I would encourage you with Matthew chapter 6 in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, where it's about praying, giving, fasting. And it says, our Father who sees in secret will reward you. And Jesus says that about all of those things. But for me, it's like, hey, there's these unseen things that are happening that you're doing that no one else sees, that you want to sometimes shout from the rooftops at people when they criticize you. And I would say, take a deep breath, rest in the finished work of Christ, and say, hey, God sees that. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So thank you for what you're doing for his bride.
Yeah, that's good. And a wonderful note to end on. John, thank you for taking the time today just to be with us, to just share from your experience, encourage, hopefully challenge, and help people kind of think about what does mission work look like. And thank you for what you all are doing at Global Outreach. You guys are doing some really important work. And so, we're just so grateful for you. And thank you to those of you listening or watching this. We hope that it has been helpful. Again, our goal is focused conversations that empower healthy churches. So we hope that this has done that. If it has, we would encourage you to share it, whether you send somebody the link or subscribe or leave a review or hit like or whatever it might be. That helps us get these conversations into more people's ears. So we certainly appreciate that. And we appreciate the opportunity to have these conversations and build into church leaders like you. So thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.